lì con tutto l'oro addosso, come I faraoni!
I just released the first full-length, high-effort video behind a paywall, and the third hour-and-a-half-long plus video I made this summer overall. I've been wanting to make something just diving into the films of Pier Paolo Pasolini for years, but the time has just never been right, and I knew that there would be all kinds of obstacles in my way. First of all, no faith whatsoever in how the algorithm would treat a thing like that on either of my channels, and secondly, I know, especially for the second half, I'd have to censor way too much. Regardless, the plan was always to make the Pasolini video this summer, though I was still racking my brain around all these factors. I was contemplating posting it to my second channel. I also considered posting it on main, but in any case, I started working on it and my Nathan Fielder video directly after the twerking essay. I've been wanting to enter a new chapter regardless, and that was what the Nathan Fielder video ended up being about. But afterwards, upon upload day and just after, I realized I had no choice. Something fundamentally had to change. I may post this to my second channel. I've been posting stuff like this to my Patreon. So to tell those who aren't on my Patreon, what I have ultimately decided is to make some videos, actual proper videos, Patreon exclusive. Now, what I intend to post exclusively to my Patreon won't substitute necessarily for what is posted onto YouTube. This Pasolini retrospective isn't exactly like something I would usually post on YouTube, but I realize I genuinely am unable to do what this platform maybe wants me to do, or at least I was presented with a few options, all of which meant me changing something fundamentally about my approach. I could either pivot to making safe, algorithm-friendly stuff that perhaps gamifies trending topics and more or less requires me to remove my soul entirely.
Potrei forse vendere l'anima che sta dentro al mio corpo.
I could zero in on a particular niche and only make videos following a particular formula and grow in that way, or I could take a step back, really ask myself why I'm doing this, and what utility I want this platform and the audience I've amassed to have in my broader life and career, I suppose. I won't get into all the details, but the thing is, no matter what I do, I literally cannot upload to YouTube with the frequency I've been doing. But the algorithm has told me, and it's become very clear, that I need to shake something up, because historically when I take breaks, the numbers never quite recover. I made 3 feature-length video essays in the past few months in my bedroom, and got paid less for it than I did when I worked a little part-time job at my school library for a few months. Y'all probably been hearing that YouTube has been paying less recently than it used to. It's paying less than you probably think. And frankly, it's becoming dehumanizingly not worth it to try to fight with this place. Something has to give. So what I've decided is that, at least for the time being, I'm going to have to make more of a presence for myself away from this platform. And what this also means is I need my Patreon to become a lot stronger than it is currently. My goal, at least my immediate goal, is to earn about as much as I was earning last year from YouTube, which isn't a lot, but it would still just be nice just to have those legs. If like 100 people join the $1 tier, that gets me a whole fraction closer to being out of the danger zone. I created a Substack and I've been posting some written essays there as well. I created a Ko-fi for those who just want to give me a little tip and can't necessarily make the monthly contributions. And I've decided to move forward with this Pasolini project by reserving it for $1 plus tiers on Patreon. That is all paid tiers. I usually keep Patreon exclusive stuff $3 and up, but I've been posting my full video essays in the $1 tier, so I figure if you otherwise would have watched something like this on YouTube, I'm not gonna like rob you blind. And again, every dollar counts in times like these.
I professori vanno mangiati in salsa piccante, diceva Giorgio Pasquali. Però chi li mangia e li digerisce diventa un po' professore anche lui.
This Pasolini project is the first video I've made in a very long time that I've actually made almost exactly how I wanted it. Almost no censorship, no engagement farming, no clickbait nonsense, no mimetic words, no subversion, no nothing. No overthinking every little word I say, just diving into the films and work of Italy's most controversial yet provocative director, Pier Paolo Pasolini. What separates this from an Orson Welles video or the Boy Meets World video is that this is just a straight retrospective. No hybrid essay. I mean, I do postulate a little bit, but that is only based on the text and what the text is saying, and the text is saying so much. It could have been so much longer. And speaking of text, most of the text is Italian, so people can't be listening to this while they eat Doritos and play video games either. My own voice is the only English you will be hearing, and beyond that, it's just Italian and the subtitles.
Ma ora ho saputo che la Chiesa non ci benedice più.
Ma perché? A chi facciamo del male?
A nessuno facciamo male.
I'd been interested in Pasolini for years, though I've never quite considered myself a fan per se. I don't think I have historically really liked his films from an enjoyment standpoint on their own, but it's always the context. It's the context around them that has always fascinated me, and thinking about the person making it and why he made them in that way and what he's saying with them. And that is what we're really looking at in this retrospective. Pier Paolo Pasolini is interesting to me for a few very specific reasons that will be very obvious, when you watch. He was a queer Marxist Italian with a very complicated relationship with religion, as even though he was an atheist, his films are filled with religious text and imagery, and he even made what is considered the greatest Jesus movie of all time. Very interesting conversation to be had there. What I suspect of him, and he says as much, something similar, in a brief interview he did with Agnes Varda, my favorite person ever, of how the religious imagery is more akin in his mind to old Italian paintings. And how that reads to me is that his religiosity is more related to his Italianness. Which is interesting because he also has a bit of a contempt for Italian society, or at least what's become of it after the war. The rapid industrialization and American influence, but he also expresses a contempt for, though I would argue still suffers from, a Eurocentric gaze.
Gente di colore, è nella speranza che l'uomo non ha colore. Gioia dopo gioia, vittoria dopo vittoria.
He was a big fan of the Third World. Of course, as a Marxist, as a communist, he celebrated the victories of Cuba and various African nations, gaining their liberation at the time that he was working, visiting India, and particularly in his latter films, his soundtracks were filled with non-Western traditional music, like African music, Tibetan chants, Japanese hogaku. Gospel of St. Matthew has a Negro spiritual and the blues, but I still criticize him a little bit for how his Europeanness might perhaps exoticize these nations a little bit and people, or that he might merely like them aesthetically as filmic elements to be used.
La realtà sono queste forme nella sommità dei cieli.
Lotta di classe, ragione di ogni guerra. Soavi forme di cancro, rose rognose della guerra.
La classe padrona della bellezza, fortificata dall'uso della bellezza, giunta ai supremi confini della bellezza, dove la bellezza è soltanto bellezza.
It is interesting speaking about Pasolini for all the political reasons. More than most people at that time, he seemed to first and foremost treat himself as a political figure and put his anti-fascism in the center of his work. I mean, it was common. Many of the French New Wave figures like Godard and Varda, who he worked with, were also very Marxist. But it was clearly a central thing for him. I've expressed my own journey, or you could say, for how I ought or ought not to put my beliefs in my work, as whether consciously or not, that stuff is always there. What YouTube has done, though, and frankly one of the many reasons I'm trying to create a bit of a distance, is that the nature of discourse has been so poisoned and filtered through entertainment and optics. I think there's just some human development and aesthetic voice finding that I've been unable to do when constantly dancing to the mimetic tune. Like, I know what I'm interested in right now, but YouTube ain't helping me. See my essay in Substack about American understanding and the folding of self. All these things intensify for me as I actively work towards finishing my first official work of fiction, which I have finished the black and white rough of I Gotta Pee, which you can also find on Patreon. And if you go there and read it, I think, especially since you know me from here, the politics is in it, and you're gonna see it. but it is obscured in such a way that it can conceivably go over a lot of people's heads, or they see the imagery but not necessarily know what I'm saying with it. But it's interesting to look at Pasolini because he was also an essayist and political figure from quite a bit before he started making films, and certainly during the time that he was a filmmaker, and that affects how people perceived his work as well. People, I speak in the video, people protested at Akatone, and he got in fights with people. That's what I'm anchoring the conversation around. That's why he was always getting attacked and scandalized and arrested for his films. Hell, it's probably why he was assassinated. Looking at how his ideas manifest themselves in the work is so interesting. I read somewhere that he had a film he wanted to make that would have been about Paul, formerly Saul, from the Bible, but set in modern day where he's a fascist and then gets some kind of enlightenment and turns into a leftist radical. One of the mimetic titles I was considering for a potential YouTube, the only anti-fascist filmmaker, because he would have been quite directly responding to fascism from the context of someone who was there at the place and time that it was invented and centered a resistance in his work throughout. But at the same time, I don't want to idolize him too much. There are things I go into in the video, more conversations where I'd have to mince words had this been a YouTube video. The thing between himself and Neto Davoli. There really is no separation of art and artist because you can see it in his films. The nuances of how he uses sex on screen, following up the trilogy of life with Salo. I don't think any mature, nuanced conversation can be had about that film on this platform. Sex is a conversation I've quite frankly lost all faith in having a nuanced conversation about on the internet overall. But here I can go into some of those complexities. It's ironic because this is the exact problem he was trying to speak about in his films and why he made Comizi d'Amore. Speaking of Comizi d'Amore, another interesting thing I didn't quite get into in the video though was exactly how he portrayed queerness on screen. Like, for me, the presence itself and the fact that sex and gender is a constant topic he was always tackling from jump is how that queerness manifests itself. But I was listening to a podcast actually speaking about Salo, and they mentioned how a part of the evil and perversion of the libertines in Salo is sort of portrayed to be their queerness and deviance from sexual gender norms. And I did get into thinking, how would I feel about how he portrays homosexuality and queerness in general, had I not known that he himself was openly gay? Like, in Comizi d'Amore, half of the people say the most homophobic crap to his face, and he doesn't really push back. Me watching it, though, I know that the fact that he's bringing up the topic of homosexuality dead on at all, the fact he's making this film at all, is because he is in that camp. But yeah, in many of his films, most of the time, outright gayness is portrayed. It is either punished or there's some kind of hypocrisy. This is one of the criticisms that has always been handed to Pasolini, though. Not just on that topic, but it's that he's provocative and explores these taboos, but often just leaves it as that. He just provokes without offering any kind of solutions. He starts conversations without really telling anyone where to go, which is another very me thing, I suppose. I spoke about that a bit in the Nathan Fielder video. I don't think artists really ought to be giving you everything. Maybe the conversation starter might be enough. But again, this does also go into some of the nihilism you begin to see in his films. Anyway, let's not tread further. More of this kind of analysis in the video itself. I could literally go all day. Like I say, I plan to make more things like this, just exploring people's work, exploring different topics in a more straightforward way, not necessarily me arguing for something, just exploring what's happening. I really do not intend to put this video onto YouTube. I don't think it would do well, and I'd have to perform all kinds of surgery on it. Other filmographies I've been wanting to go through are Agnes Varda, Shuji Terayama. I've also been wanting to do like genre deep dive stuff, more straightforward historical stuff, media history. Been wanting to do some other more experimental / off-brandish stuff. The immediate goal really is to get just about as much from Patreon as I used to get from YouTube, so I feel less pressure, less incentive to like ruin my content, though it also means I must get more sparse with uploads. But with each upload, I don't know how it will work yet, but it is to go the other way and make them even more meaningful, more interesting, more prickly. But to do that, I need my legs, man. You know, I reached, if you following me on main, I don't know why you're watching this if you're not following me on main. I'm working on a video about anime, and I reached out to members of my audience, you know, and even just seeing a few of the submissions so far, it's nice, you know, to be reminded that there are human beings who are really here and value my work and have interesting opinions themselves. And that is a value, that is the great value that I've always found in YouTube, in spite of the blows that it's always brought on. That's the joy, is the actual people watching and resonating with the things that you're saying. I can't afford to leave this place yet, even if it gives me 10 million reasons to do so. People care about things I make, man. I can't let this evil ass website steal my joy. But regardless, again, I will be doing more stuff there and elsewhere going forward. Interestingly enough, on the very day that I uploaded the video onto Patreon, Khadija announced how they are leaving YouTube because the internet high-key just kind of sucks out, and I won't lie, I've been feeling that. I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't blame you. Same, if not for all the things I'm discussing today, I would do the same thing. But hey, if I am to continue here at all, I'm going to need to start working smarter and not harder, because I will kill myself. But I need to start working on more side projects like this, at least until the regime change.